Hi, I'm Solana Ramirez-Garcia. I am the Program Manager here at the Fulton Institute, and it is my pleasure to talk today with our new CEO, DuMarkus Davis.
How's it going?
Hey, DuMarkus.
Hey, Solana.
Okay, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
For sure. I'm a native of Atlanta, was born in College Park. I usually joke with people, if you've listened to any hip hop music, you've heard one of my neighbors at some point. But some kind of way I ended up with a violin in my hand. And as they say, the rest was history. Ultimately would end up going and graduating from the San Francisco Conservatory of Music, ran a startup, worked with a few of the biggest orchestras in the world, the San Francisco Symphony, the LA Phil. And the journey has since brought me back to Atlanta. And now I get the distinct pleasure of leading the Fulton Institute.
You are at one of the largest organizations in LA. Why come here?
It was time to come home. For me, I always knew that my impact was larger than just serving a small community. And it's not to say that that work wasn't meaningful, because it was. But I've always wanted to do something bigger. And so when this opportunity presented itself, it was kind of like the stars aligning. You have the community that raised me. You have arts, culture, the environment, all things that I'm extremely passionate about, and the opportunity to make a meaningful impact, not just in Atlanta, but across the Southeast. That for me was a no-brainer.
What is something you love about Atlanta?
Waffle House.
Okay.
No. There's so much to love about Atlanta. Atlanta's special. As you ask me that question, so many things come to mind. I think about Cascade. I think about the food scene. Where else can you go and get lemon pepper wet wings and a lemon pepper martini? Atlanta's special. People go, Atlanta's not a real place, but having grown up here, it's a real place and it's not a real place at the same time. I think what is really special about Atlanta to me, though, is Atlanta is a city that consistently reinvents itself. When I think about the civil rights movement and how you had all of these leaders of color come together to say, hey, we want to make change. That happened in Atlanta on Auburn Avenue, not too far from where we are. When I think about how trap music and Magic City have influenced the entire world, that happened in Atlanta. And we're talking about all of this within the last 50 to 60 years. We're not talking about hundreds of years ago. This is all in recent history. Atlanta is one of the few places that you can go, and if you have an idea, if you have a vision, you can bring it to life, and there's the support system and the ecosystem to make it happen. I think having learned all that I've learned being away from home, it makes being back in Atlanta at this time period so special, because I feel like what I'm able to bring to this role and bring to these next few years with this organization and beyond is knowledge that I have soaked up in some of the richest ecosystems in the world. In San Francisco, that was the software ecosystem. In LA, it was the entertainment ecosystem. And I think the beauty of Atlanta is Atlanta has all of those, and they are all thriving in their own ways. And for me, I just want to be one small part of that larger ecosystem to help move us to that next level and help put us on the map even more than we already are.
What does giving back to the community mean to you?
Giving back means everything. I would not be where I am or who I am today without people who've imparted into my life. I think about how my career has blossomed as a violinist. A fun fact a lot of people don't know is that the violin that I play on has been on extended loan to me from a patron by the name of Scott, who lives just north of Atlanta. That would not have been possible traveling overseas, performing in movies with some of the biggest artists in the world. It wouldn't have been possible if I didn't have a good instrument. That instrument came from someone who lives right here in Atlanta. When I think about my business mentors, a lot of these guys have built companies in Atlanta. So for me, giving back is just as important as anything else that I do. I want to make sure that I'm investing in the next generation so that they have the same opportunities that I did. I think one of the greatest opportunities I've seen in my life is the opportunity to gain exposure to other cultures, to other people. to other ideas, and it's helped shape this global view that I have of how we live our lives today. And it also helps shape my decision making. That only comes because I've had really smart and incredible people imparting into my life. And so for me, when I think about giving back, it always sits at the core of what I do. I want to make sure that I'm making a meaningful impact wherever I go and whatever I do.
What are some of your proudest accomplishments?
That's an interesting one. I think one of my proudest accomplishments that always comes to mind is being able to help thousands of young people and artists make money and learn during the pandemic. So with my company Music Book, we started out as this idea of like Uber for musicians, but we very quickly pivoted to this digital model where if you were an artist, you could utilize our platform to manage your business online. And this is the business of teaching, of course. And if you were a student, you could utilize our platform to connect with some of the greatest musical artists in the world. I'm talking members of the Atlanta Symphony, of the LA Philharmonic, of the San Francisco Symphony. They were able to utilize our platform to teach and deliver lessons remotely anywhere in the world. For me, that was an extremely cathartic moment where all of a sudden I realized, hey, I was able to build something that's affecting the lives of thousands of people. I would say that is probably the proudest moment that comes to mind. Beyond that, I think there are other like what I call vanity metrics that were pretty cool and pretty shiny. I got a nod from Forbes 30 Under 30 some years ago, have been featured in Billboard, Inc. magazine. Those things are all cool, but for me, they only stand to amplify the real impact that I'm having. So for me, the most precious thing in my mind would be actually making it possible for people to continue to learn when people didn't think it was possible.
What's it like, or what has it been like going from a for-profit model to now a nonprofit model?
There's an old saying, and I'm going to butcher this, but I believe it was Dave Ramsey who said that the only way for a nonprofit to work is to make profit. And so for me, I don't think too much about going from model to model. And I have to give credit where it's due. While I was in school, I studied under two of the greatest nonprofit leaders in the world, Peter Pestreich and David Gockley. Peter Pestreich is the former CEO of the San Francisco Symphony, and David Gockley is the executive director emeritus of the San Francisco Opera. Both of these gentlemen led these organizations through tremendous change, growing the organization significantly. I believe in some cases, even increasing their endowments by over $50 million in a matter of years. And so I got to sit at these guys' feet and learn directly from them about what it meant to actually lead a nonprofit and also make sure that we are moving in such a way that we're set up for a brighter future. Because at the time when these guys were leading their nonprofits, what they were doing was considered outlandish, it was considered different, and it was considered out of the norm. And so I take that same approach when I think about leading a nonprofit today. I come from the tech world. We move very quickly. We believe in breaking things and sometimes breaking things that aren't necessarily broken to make them better. And I believe the same rules can apply in the nonprofit space. We have to figure out how can we sustain our organization for long enough that we can truly make a meaningful impact on the community that we're trying to serve. My personal hot take, though, is that I don't think a lot of nonprofits operate in the right way. If our goal as a nonprofit is to affect a community or affect a certain population, I don't think it requires that a nonprofit is around for 1,000 years to be able to do that. And so I believe in this idea of mission-driven obsolescence, meaning if we at the Fulton Institute say, hey, in the next 10 or 20 years, we want to have made such a meaningful impact in the youth in this population, we want to teach them business. If we do that and we do our jobs properly, in the next 20 years, who knows, we could have touched 10, 15,000 youth directly from the Atlanta area. And then maybe in 20 years, if we have really done our jobs, we're not even necessary. And so we can sunset the organization. I think one of the greatest flaws that I see in some nonprofits, not all, because some do need to be around. Orchestras, for example, orchestras have a reason why they're around for over 100 years. I think some nonprofits have just become fundraising machines. And because they can go out and they can raise hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, they still exist. And so for me, that's not the goal. Of course, we're going to have to raise money. Of course, it takes money to make a meaningful impact. But I want to make such an impact that the organization is no longer necessary. If we're doing that, or if we're at least moving in that direction, that's when I know that we have hit our sweet spot.
Briefly describe the Fulton Institute.
For sure. So Fulton Institute is a regional catalyst for change in arts, education, culture, and the environment. What I believe that means for us is that we are operating at the intersection of all of those specific verticals to make meaningful change in the community. As you know, Atlanta has a rich art scene. We have a rich culture. The environment is also directly impacted by a lot of the actions that we do right here in Metro Atlanta and across the Southeast. And so when I think about who we are as an organization, we are an organization that's pushing for positive change through the arts, through culture, and through the environment.
So what makes the Fulton Institute different from other organizations here in Atlanta?
I think what makes the Fulton Institute different from other organizations in Atlanta is partially our positioning. We are one of the only organizations that I can think of in Metro Atlanta or in the Southeast that blend arts, culture, and the environment. I think that's one of the key differentiators for a lot of us. There are a lot of arts organizations that focus on one particular vertical. They maybe do music really well, or they do dance very well. We think about arts as a whole, which I absolutely love. I also think the inclusion of culture into our ethos is extremely important. I always say Atlanta's greatest export is culture. Atlanta has influenced so much of the world, from the fashion to the food to the music. And one of the challenges that I see around Metro Atlanta and across the Southeast is that sometimes we do a poor job of monetizing that culture. And so for us, being at the center of all of those places, one of the things that we are tackling that I'm really excited about is how to help artists who are being birthed in this city, how to help them make a meaningful income for the art that they're creating. I've seen it so often that artists create great art, but then they either have to go outside of the city to sell, or they don't sell their art at all, but people are making money off of it in LA and San Francisco. And that's a real challenge. One of my hopes in this role and for the future of our organization is that we can help artists regain some of that power so that they understand, how do I make money? How do I read this contract so that I'm not getting pigeonholed? That's where I think that's one of our greatest opportunities.
How would you describe your leadership style, and how will it differ from previous leadership at the Fulton Institute?
That's a good question. I can for sure describe my leadership style. I would say I'm extremely collaborative. I like to throw things against the wall. Not everything is going to work, but I like to hear all of the voices in the room. One of the things that makes me really excited about working with this organization is you all. You all are one of the smartest teams I will say I've ever worked with, and you each know your lane and you're really good at it. And so for me as a leader, that helps me, because coming in, I know I can trust you all. I know I can lean on you all when I don't have the answer. And I know that together we're going to make the best decision possible given the information that we're presented with. In reference to previous leaders, I don't know. I hope I can live up to the great example that they've set. It's not often that you see nonprofits that are around for 20 plus years. And so I know there were a lot of positive things that were happening during that time period to get the organization to this point. Without knowing them personally, my hope is that I can help shepherd this organization into its bright and shining future. I want us to make a real meaningful impact in bringing real capital to Atlanta and to the Southeast to support art. Atlanta's art ecosystem is going through a major renaissance right now. In the short time that I've been here, I have already met with so many incredible visual artists and musicians who tell me the same thing. They go, I'm at the top of my career. I can go to Art Basel and I can sell a work for over $100,000. And that feeds my family for almost a year. But I can't sell that same work in Atlanta. That for me is a major challenge. And I think part of that is just positioning. I think people know that Atlanta produces great art, but I don't believe people value it in the same way that they do when they see art in a New York, when they see art in an LA, in a Basel, Switzerland, in France. And so I think some of that is just positioning. I think some of it is how the story is told. And a word that I'm always hesitant to use, but I think applies in this case, is commercialization. One of the things that I learned during my time on the West Coast and abroad was how a lot of these brands and companies commercialize the work that they're producing. It's not that they're doing anything different. It's not that they're doing rocket science. It's just about telling the story better. And so one of the things and one of my hopes and the vision I see for this organization is really positioning us as a catalyst for helping people tell better stories about their work so that we can bring that investment back to Atlanta. I think that is what is going to help move this ecosystem forward even the more.
Well, thank you so much for
you,
talking
Solana.
with me. I'm really excited about what the future holds for this organization under your leadership.
And thank you. I'm looking forward to working together.